the Jerry Seinfeld.
Do the sound again.
Ba-ba-now-ba-bow.
That's Bree, if you couldn't tell. But it's Dave and Bree. Today we are doing book talks, which is trying to be a short podcast where we are talking about books. So we're trying to go back and forth between book talks or something called Let's Talk About Books. But the thing that we're going to talk about today is a book written by Sebastian Junger called Tribe on homecoming and belonging. So this book costs less than $13. It's kind of strange that the cheapest version to buy this book on Amazon was less than $13, and it was also the hardcover, where the audiobook actually costs more. I thought that was kind of weird. And the paperback is actually more too. So I bought this book, and off of a suggestion of my second line supervisor, my brigade commander, is on his reading list basically, and I found it to be a really, really good read overall. And there were some key points that I shared with Bree along the way, so we decided to record it here, and then maybe it would be things that other people could see and listen to, and maybe they would want to pick the book up too to support the author, but then also kind of learn from it. And so overall, it only took a couple days to read when I actually sat down to try and read it, but I guess we'll just jump right into it and go to the first thing that I thought was kind of cool, which was, it's about on page 18. It says, first, agriculture and then industry changed two fundamental things about the human experience. The accumulation of personal property allowed people to make more and more individualistic choices about their lives, and those choices unavoidably diminished group efforts towards a common goal. And as a society modernized, people found themselves able to live independently from any communal group. And I felt this was like a very important thing to highlight, because it shows how people stop having a tribe to begin with, how we as people start not thinking that the group is important, and we only start worrying about ourselves, basically because we don't need other people to kind of move along. But what did you think, Bree?
I think it's kind of like the nowadays with the whole COVID thing, everybody started working online by themselves, remote. And I think in a way everybody's kind of gotten more used to that, where you'd rather work on the computer by yourself, and that's a lot of people's jobs, just sit in the computer, talk to people through there, and not really actually I guess talking to actual people face to face, and like it was in the past.
I think that you have that where you're just sitting at home working remotely. You don't have to look good for other people. You don't have to take care of yourself. You're making it like an individual choice just to sit there, because going into the office means that you have to do other things because you actually have to see other people. If that makes sense. I never did that during COVID. I went to work every single day.
I did too.
So, but with this thing, I think it was just important to note that as technology kind of moves us along the path that the humans are on, the less we need other people. And throughout history, the more we needed other people, the closer we were. But that just ties into the next one, I think, which is not, it's like on the next page, but it talks about the mechanism seems simple. Poor people are forced to share their time and resources more than wealthy people are, and as a result, they live in closer communities. So you don't have, there's not people that make millions of dollars a year that live in a trailer park, where, a trailer park, could be less than 10 acres and I have no idea what, 20, 30, trailer homes in there. I lived in a trailer park as a kid, and everybody seems to know each other more than rich people who live in giant neighborhoods that have big properties and huge houses, and they don't even know who their neighbors are. When people are, don't have as much money as everybody else, and they have to share their resources, watch each other's kids, share each other's lawnmowers, sometimes give their kids rides to school. I mean, you know what I'm talking about? You've talked about that with like growing up where you grew up, where the family helped each other out.
Well, and so like another thing with that, where talking about wealthier people are more are not as close to groups, right? It's like being able to have that, like technology, like phones, an iPhone's like so expensive, and having that kind of what we were talking about earlier, where people prefer doing like the remote working and stuff like that. If you have the resources for it, it's easier to go that route. But in the lower class communities where you don't have, where you're not able to have that type of technology or, you know, afford it, you go outside and play. You know, that's how most of us grew up, really. Like, I guess our age, where we didn't have a lot of technology.
Hey, how old are we here? I mean, but it's true. You know, the community, you went outside and you played with the neighbors' kids, or you were the neighbors' kids and you played with them. Now everything's kind of online, and everyone's kind of afraid to let their kids go outside and experience the neighborhood. You know, this next part here, to move us along, it's kind of talking about how certain countries in Europe, their suicide rate went down when the country went to war. And I can't read a whole bunch of pages, but there's a part in here that's important where the author is quoting research talking about it would be irresponsible to suggest violence as a means of improving mental health, but the Belfast findings suggest that people will feel better psychologically if they have more involvement within their community. And as a military person, as a careerist in the military, I mean, I've been in the Army for 23 years, basically trying to figure out a way to make people feel included in the group. You know, the military has a huge problem with suicide, and a lot of it has to do when we're idle and we don't have things to keep us occupied or missions to go on. When the mission stops, you know, suicide becomes prevalent, and so people need to be involved in the communities. That way they can basically, you know, keep themselves sane, I guess. And when in times of conflict, like what the Belfast findings were talking about, people felt better because they used the community to stay together, you know.
I think being able to take care of each other and have compassion over other people, and that makes us in turn feel better. And if we don't have that, we're not able to support anybody in that way, then in a way, how do we feel better, right? So having that community does, I think, kind of help to, and like Dave was saying with the Army, where they're always trying to do things for people to get together and get to know each other and things like that, because I think that influences that sense of community and be able to have each other's back and support each other.
Yeah, I was talking about this book with the person that recommended it to me about some of the different quotes and whatnot, and we're doing a Mungadai, which I don't know what origin of language that is, but the whole point of that Mungadai is for us to do things as leaders together and build teams and build that cohesion. So sticking with like the military theme, the next reference I want to talk about in here is the fact that intensive training and danger create what is known as unit cohesion. Strong emotional bonds within the company or the platoon, and high unit cohesion is correlated with lower rates of psychiatric breakdown. Then it goes on about World War II and has some outstanding references about airborne units and some of the different things that they went through. Well, when you have hard training, when you are going through things that are very difficult and very tough, you can't do it by yourself. I mean, some people can. Some people are weird freaks of nature that just move on no matter what. But things in the military, in the Army, it's what I know, are much easier when I can look to the left or look to the right and see people are doing the exact same thing I am, and they're not quitting, you know. And it just makes things, it just shows that we're all part of the team, part of the family, part of the community, and doing it alone is 10 times harder than what it is when you're there with people.
It helps you push yourself even harder to help out, you know, those that are doing a great deal of work. And one of the things that reminded me of was that show Band of Brothers, where the Easy Company was, they had them working really hard and training like extra hard, and but they made it through. You know, they went through a lot, and they were very close, and their extra training got them through.
Yeah. And also, great reference, by the way. Easy Company and Band of Brothers. Great show. I could watch that anytime,
It was a good show.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a terrible part of history, but it's very relatable to the time and to what it means. Even this, when the going gets tough, you have to get tough and keep going, right? So that really ties into the next part of this. It says, in combat, soldiers all but ignore differences of race, religion, and politics within their platoons. It's no wonder many of them get so depressed when they come home. And speaking from experience, been to Iraq and Afghanistan a couple times, and you see the same people every day for the most part, and you sleep the same schedule if you can. You go to work, and maybe you get a day off, maybe you don't. And I'm not an infantryman, aircraft mechanic really, but still that long hours of making sure aircraft are ready to go, flying on missions, all those things. But it's all part of the cycle, and so you basically get to a routine where you know what to expect, or you see that you see those people every day, and you get accustomed to those same traditions, and you finally get to go home. And it's just different. It's different because you're not, you're there with your family now, right? And that's, for a lot of folks, that's enough. But for some folks come home from deployments and they go to a barracks room and there's nobody there waiting for them. They're just there by themselves. There's no family, wife and kids, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. They don't have any of that. So they had this close, real tight-knit family that they slept right next to for, 6 months, 9 months, a year, sometimes 15 months. And then the very first night they get back from the deployment, they're by themselves. Some people relish in that, they can't wait, but others really don't know what to do with themselves, and they get very depressed very quickly.
Right, because you miss, having that camaraderie with the team, and having somebody there and to talk to, and, even if like all you all were doing is training or having to deal with whatever deployment situation, or but you were together doing it, so it's like you do miss the people.
Yeah, definitely. And the people is why a lot of people do this, right? Whether it's the military or any hard job, really, it's the people that kind of keep you doing it and motivate you. This next quote comes from someone that the author interviewed in New York City, but it says, if you want to make a society work, then you don't keep underscoring the places where you're different, you underscore your shared humanity. And how easier is it to identify where you're similar versus where you're different? And we like to joke around and we say we all wear green sometimes, right? Like that's the Army thing. Everybody's blood is the same color. We all have bills to pay, all these things. And there's so many things that we're the same about that it's almost just stupid to me where people focus on anything that separates you and keeps you separate from the team.
I think that, what was that movie we saw recently with the segregation?
The one where they were having the meetings to bring everybody together.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't remember the name of that.
It's a newer movie on Netflix.
It's a movie that talks. There's a man and a woman, and the man is white and the woman is black, and they're both leaders in their communities. And they're both basically doing these charrettes with this third party person, and they come down to figure out how they're going to integrate the schools in their community.
Yeah, and so I really like that movie because in a way it there's a part where she's talking about she's telling the gentleman like, hey, do you believe in the Bible and stuff like that, and he was like, well, yes, and they were both faithful, right? And that was one of their things they had in common, and she tells them, well, the same God that made you made me. So I thought that was a very good reference of what they had in common.
Oh, yeah. They found common ground. They didn't mean to, but they did. That's great. So the last thing, I didn't really highlight it I had highlighted in the things in the book as I read it that I wanted to talk about. And then as I was kind of jotting down some notes before we recorded this, I found something that I had written, but I didn't mark it. And so what I wrote down on page 136, it's the last page of the actual written portion of the book, was just don't be dead inside. And that's referring to a man that was homeless that had given the author his lunch. And because the guy just didn't want to be dead inside, that was his goal, to be a good part of the community. It was easy. All you had to do was don't be dead inside. And, I think that's good advice, because anytime that you don't try and take care of the people around you, if you see someone that needs help and you don't do it, a portion of you dies on the inside,
Yeah, I think being a good person, doing the right thing, I think it's something important.
Yeah, for sure. So another part about this book I think is pretty cool is that there's 30 pages of source notes. I mean, the author, Sebastian Junger, did a lot of research. He talked to a lot of people. So there's 30 pages of references basically in this book. So a lot of the points that he talks about, a lot of the Native American history that are in the book, it's very well written, but it's also very well resourced and referenced. And so it's not just a person just making things up and talking about their opinion about things. So the whole book in total was only 136 pages. It's not a giant book. It's a good read, but I learned a lot from it, and stuff that I'm going to use in my leadership on a routine basis. So once again, the book is authored by Sebastian Junger. It's published in 2016, and you can find it wherever books are sold.
And I think that's some of the quotes that you referenced from it are actual with interesting things, life lessons to think about, in our lives, and
Yeah, it applies. It can apply, and I've read a lot of books before that I couldn't relate or empathize with the author, or didn't think that it applied to me, and so I just couldn't finish the book. This book applies to almost anybody that wants to be part of a community or a team or a tribe. So, well, thank you, Bree, and thank you to everybody who clicked on this to listen to it. And we haven't decided yet, but it's either book talks or let's talk about books. So thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you.